Welcome to the Eat, Move, Live 52 podcast. We are excited to talk about a topic dear to our hearts, and we hope to yours as well, namely emotional eating. With the holidays coming up, there is so much piling on, and Roland and I thought this would be a great time to discuss emotional eating.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. We just got back from a very nice 4-day road trip and feeling super stress-free.
Super stress-free. I'm looking at my pedometer. It's like 14,000 steps today. It's like, what did we do this morning before we left? Because my butt feels flat from all the sitting. But we must have done something walking up and down a couple of cool trails this morning.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Got up this morning, went on a drizzly, kind of foggy hike, and yeah, a little soak in the tub, the mineral springs, and just had a great day.
Yeah, it was a great front loading of a day that was going to be spent sitting for the rest of it. But I caught up on some good books, and Roland and I ended up listening to some comedy right in the most horrible LA traffic. So that's always helpful.
Yeah, so we were talking a lot this weekend about stress in general. Galina did a really good stress relief talk last week at one of the doctor's offices where she works. And while we were there, I just had this huge, like, I didn't realize the kind of stress that I was feeling, I guess, until I really paid attention. I was sitting in the back taking pictures, and I followed along with the kind of things she was saying, and all of a sudden I'm like, wow, this is the first time I felt like really like, I don't know, like a connection to myself, or I felt like there was nothing else really seriously going on. And yeah, that's sort of a powerful thing, just this lack of stress. I just really didn't know, I don't know how to describe it.
Can you guys tell he's like out of words? It's hard for Roland to describe what it was like to feel some quietness in his mind. It was interesting because what he's describing is how he felt after I took the whole group through about a 10-minute exercise that uses the senses.
Hmm.
It uses your sense of sight and hearing and smell and taste and your kinesthetic sense, your
Touch.
touch, yes. And it's like, what's that word? Touch, the kinesthetic sense. And it was very interesting because one of the ladies from the second row, she was looking at me going, my mind is really quiet. I don't know quite what to do with myself. And what she was describing and what Roland was now attempting to describe is this very weird sense that people get when they first realize that they are here in this moment, in the chair, paying attention, not thinking about the past, not thinking about the future. And all of a sudden, the present becomes manageable because you're not dealing with a project that's not here in this moment, because I am your teacher in this moment and the project's not here. And you're not dealing with something that you can't do anything about, which is in the past. And all of a sudden, it's almost like some sort of a warp. It's like a thought warp
Mm.
where you're looking at yourself going, oh wow, like my sense of reality is completely different when I'm actually embodied, when I'm in my body. And this is a great segue into our talk today about emotional eating because oftentimes emotional eating happens exactly because we are not in our bodies or because we don't want to be in our bodies.
Mm. That's interesting
Yeah.
because you think you're just tuned out and oblivious to it, but in reality, there's some sort of subconscious thing that's protecting you or trying to protect you or you from some sort of pain or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. You can say that.
I just did.
Yes, you did.
Gold star for Roland.
Gold star for Roland. He figured it out.
Yeah. So I don't know that. I mean, if you're new to the podcast, you may not know it, but I've been a victim or whatever, however you want to describe it. I'm a survivor of emotional eating, right? So I I lost 110 pounds, and those 110 pounds were primarily from emotional eating, or like a huge part of it, right? I didn't just overeat. I I was like obsessed, like not obsessed, I was like addicted to overeating and like using that to sort of hide behind. I was hiding behind food, I felt like, and it's sometimes it's still a challenge to this day.
Yeah, Roland just sent out in the last newsletter some old pictures of him, and you're a teenager or early 20s, and it's like, wow, you can see that your body's struggling to, really embody power and strength and size that are typical of a male of, that age. And
Hmm.
you're like, no, I'm just gonna eat, which is certainly one way to get through that stage. It's very complex, young adult life is very
Yeah,
complex
yeah.
and very challenging.
So back then, I would not have, like, if somebody asked if I was an emotional eater, I would have said no, because I wasn't going after, like, the things you typically think of as for emotional eating foods, at least that I would have. Like, I didn't go after donuts or desserts or, like, hide with a pint of, or a quart or a gallon of ice cream. I just had, I would have an extra burger, or I'd have an
Mm,
extra meal, or I would eat, you know, 2 burritos instead of one, and I would eat until I was overfull.
yeah.
So what are some of the, so like for somebody like me back then, like what are some of the signs? Like what are some of the things that I could have looked for to become aware that emotional eating was going on?
Well, I think definitely looking at your day-to-day mood is something that you could look for. If your mood in any way was related to food, you could say that you were emotionally eating. So say that you were having a kind of a crappy day and then you had some food and you felt better, you know,
Mm-hmm.
possibly some emotional eating is going on because you might have been using food to bring feelings of satisfaction or well-being, or like that day was worth living.
Mm.
That's one way. Another way is eating without being hungry. Like we often don't eat out of physical hunger. And then another very common sign is you just had dinner and you're still opening the fridge. My mom would tell me you'd get a sinus infection if you don't, if you don't start closing the fridge at night. And it's something that I did as a teenager, definitely, is I would finish whatever the family meal was and I'd go rummaging through the fridge, 1,000 calories later,
Mm.
which there's no reason that you should be hungry after eating.
Yeah.
Right? So if you find yourself, for those of you listening, if you find yourself eating when you're not hungry, if you find yourself wanting to eat more after a meal that should have been sufficient, if you're finding yourself with a changed mood around food, and definitely if you're finding yourself having conversations after food where you're feeling guilty or bad, or you're trying to swing the pendulum the other way and now eat clean for a couple of days, you know that you're using food in behaviors that are not necessarily nutritive behaviors, but they're more around other issues.
Mm. Yeah, I used to get so mad at myself after that second burrito or second
Right.
burger or like never when I ordered it, but after I ate it, yeah.
Yeah, and that's definitely one way in which we keep ourselves locked in that cycle where the negative self-talk perpetuates a separation from self and perpetuates a separation from what's really happening. So you never really get to know yourself and your needs, and you never really get to meet your actual needs because that guilt or shame or self-blame or self-condemnation keep you from knowing yourself. And it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing, but we talk about it in my emotional eating retreats. It's very difficult to take care of someone you don't love. And it's true. It's true. It's very difficult. And so the negative self-talk keeps you separate from yourself.
It's interesting.
It is interesting.
Yeah.
And it's human and it's part of this human condition. And the more we talk about it, the more we bring light to it, the more you can see how other humans do it too. So it becomes less of a kind of a pointing finger at self thing.
Interesting. So those are the sort of the actual, well, I mean, obviously, those are the emotional reasons. Those are the psychological reasons for doing it,
Mm-hmm.
right? So are there any like physical or physiological reasons why this happens?
Absolutely. If you think of eating in general, when do we first start experiencing the effects of a meal? Is when we are babies. We're little ones,
Hmm.
right? And For those of you who have been parents or have watched little babies, babies cry, and then when they find food, namely, they're either going to find mom's breast or a bottle, they're going to eat and they're going to calm down and fall asleep. And so we have this cycle of agitation and then calming down, or activation and deactivation,
Hmm.
or you can call it sympathetic and parasympathetic. And when we eat, we naturally calm down, not only because we've received nutrients, which is going to perpetuate life, and yay, great, big deer today. That's why, our ancestors were eating fish all the time, is because they wanted to go after a bigger game. We calm down when we have abundance, when our bodies have sensed that there's nutrition coming in. But there are actual physiological mechanisms through which the act of sucking and swallowing when you're a baby, or chewing and swallowing when you're an adult, with the mastication, with the activity of the facial muscles, with some of even the effects of the sounds in the inner ear, bring a calming effect or a parasympathetic effect.
Interesting.
Yeah, so there's for example, reasons to believe that crunchy food is more calming than creamy food because of that effect of that,
Some sort of vibration that
the
it makes.
vibration and the actual muscles that are in the inner ear that respond to prosody and tone of voice. The same muscles that respond to mama's tone of voice, where a kid can recognize who the mom is. So
Is that
we,
where crunchy moms come from?
I don't know where crunchy mom comes from, but I feel like we still know so little, and yet what we know is giving us an idea about how complex we are and how many physiological needs we have unmet and how many psycho-emotional needs we have unmet.
Wow. I know I keep saying interesting, but it actually is
It
interesting.
is very interesting. And
It's
so, sorry,
no,
I
no. I
interrupted
mean,
you.
it's just
So some,
especially interesting because it's me.
yeah, right,
It's like
right, right,
that's
right.
this is something that and we talk about all sorts of things about nutrition and movement and all these things that I'm participating in, right? But this is something that it still affects me,
Right.
like on multiple levels, and so I do find it interesting and enlightening at the
It
same
is very
time.
interesting. And there's another thing where, we can only cope with stressors as well as we learned how to cope with them. And the coping is a physical skill. So how much capacity you have to tolerate, especially negative emotions, things that we deem negative, such as, sadness or anger or grief, depends on how you coped with them when you were little. And that's something that we borrow from our primary caregivers. So depending on how well mom and dad and other primary caregivers cope, that's how well you cope. And this is something that can really bring softness to the situation, where you think about back to your early childhood, how your primary caregivers dealt with stressors is usually how you're going to deal with it. And if they didn't deal well, you probably won't have that capacity either. So your ability to handle stressors is as much psychological as it is physiological. And so these days, there isn't that big of a separation. And I really am hoping that the whole mind body thing disappears, because there is no mind and body. Now, your unconscious is your body, so that we can start learning that when we're having psychoemotional challenges or challenges with emotions, there are physical challenges. They're not from your neck up, and your unconscious is in the basement of the mind. It's your whole body is your unconscious. So when you can't tolerate an emotion, you physically can't tolerate it. So looking for a physical outlet or a physical calming down effect is the most natural thing, and food does this incredibly well.
That's unfortunate.
Well, or fortunate, because some people do it with gambling or alcohol, or
Yeah, I guess.
you know, uh, promiscuity and many random partners. Like, there's many different ways that you can get that need met. Or, what are those people doing? People who freeze their credit cards because, they can't stop shopping for
Yeah.
stuff. It's all a hit. It's all an attempt to bring regulation to a system that is dysregulated, whether because the stressor is too huge right now, or because that system never developed an ability to tolerate affect, um, because of multiple challenges. And it becomes particularly difficult if you grow up in famine, or you grow up in hunger, or if food was used in some way in your family to reward or to punish. It can be so complex. I hear heartbreaking stories about kids that the only comfort that they knew in their life was food because mom or dad were not available, or kids who are adopted that I work with. It's very, very complex. So we need to hold this with a really broad view and say, hey, there's a challenge in the system, and the system of the person who's emotionally eating is asking for help. It's asking for regulation, and beating yourself up for it or putting yourself on a diet is definitely not the way to get there.
Hmm. What is like? I
Right.
mean, I've had my own journey, but so I'm better, but I'm still. It's like I have to consciously resist,
Right.
right?
So this gives you some information that there are some biological challenges with regulation that you might want to address. And those of us who are quote unquote healthy enough, whatever that means, to even be pondering this question and have enough self-awareness, there's a lot we can do. There's things like meditation that can be very helpful, yet might not be enough because you might need someone to actually sit on the outside of you and help you regulate, because in human relationship, it's relationship. Your whole human being is an interaction. And so oftentimes we take so much pride in doing things on our own, like, what can I do? But problems that occurred in relationship, or biological systems that develop in relationship and didn't develop well, need relationship in order to develop. Does that make
Mm-hmm.
sense?
Yeah.
So there's kind of two main ways that we get to this kind of fork in the road here. Like, which way do we go? We either never developed the self-regulation ability to regulate emotions and to be in touch with our bodies and to be able to tolerate whatever comes to a certain extent, because there's intolerable stuff that comes to all of us, and we hopefully have the capacity to live through it. Or so it either never developed, or it developed and got interrupted. If it developed and got interrupted, it's easier to come back to it on your own. Say you had everything perfectly developed, and then, or as well as good enough developed, well enough developed, and then something happens. And then you can get back on your horse in,
I feel like that's me. I
a
feel like I
couple of
was
months.
perfect,
Yeah.
and then something must have
Of
happened.
course you're perfect, or you wouldn't be married to me. But but you can kind of get back on your horse with some self-discipline and some meditation, or things never developed right. And I would say for most of us who are raised in Western society, that's probably the more common case. And then you need to develop it again, or for the first time, with another adult in the room.
Hmm.
And so that's where, somebody who never felt safe in their body, or who never felt safe to be in their body and feel what's happening in their body or feel their emotions, needs another human system in the room that they can feel safe with. And that's where biologically trained psychotherapist or body oriented psychotherapist or body worker, like I am trained to do somatic work, can really be incredibly helpful, where in a few sessions you can start to negotiate some of that self-regulation challenge.
Hmm. Interesting. Now, I've seen you talk about emotional eating before in small groups and in big groups, right? So I know that there are some techniques, some things you can do to sort of bring people like
Mhm.
awareness, sort of help
Mhm.
them, like maybe people who, or even show them that it's possible to, and I don't know the right word. I don't know whether it's resist or just become aware or deal with it or whatever. But I've seen you with groups lead them through a couple of exercises that at the end they're like, oh my gosh, now I have something where I have something to work with.
Right. Well, I would say the first practical thing to realize is that emotional eating is not about the food.
Okay.
So whether you emotionally eat radishes or peaches or Oreos, like, at the end of the day, some people are like, "Oh, I wish it was radishes," but you actually don't, because that really stinks and then your belly hurts. Um, but there's no way in which treating your body in an unkind way feels good, no matter what you're treating it unkindly with, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the first thing to know is that it's not about the food. Emotional eating, whether it's because you're feeling an emotion that's too much and you're trying not to feel it, or because there's self-regulation issues and you're using the food to self-soothe because life is hard and we're all overstimulated and we're all wanting to calm down before we can go to bed, whichever whichever road brought you to emotional eating, the food is not the problem. And that's the first thing to realize. If you continue to think that emotional eating is about the food and it's about discipline, this will not be very helpful to you.
Okay.
But if you're willing to think that emotional eating is a symptom and there are other things going on under the surface, then it's easier to help the system regulate and to do some biologically based exercises.
Okay. Well, I think this is good because we were talking earlier about while we were driving, right? About my emotional eating challenges and what are some of the techniques that I use to stop the attack or whatever, stop it,
Right.
right? And I said, well, I used to brush my teeth, or I would floss, or I would do something to distract myself, and then that would be it for that night,
Right.
because it usually happens to me at night. And you said that's fine, but it's not solving the problem. It's just and if I was to solve the problem with that, it would be just solving the problem with emotional eating. Now I could be drifting off into something else, using something else to cover up that same issue,
Right.
like gambling, like or whatever.
Right. Netflixing.
Netflix, yeah, that was the example. Like,
Mm-hmm.
maybe you're gonna binge watch Netflix, right?
Right.
And that's gonna end up being a bad thing too.
Right. So the question is if you deeply care about what's actually happening under the surface and you want to get to know yourself and know how to meet your own needs, you need to see that all these things, whatever they are, there's no way to go for a walk instead of emotionally eat and still address what's happening under. So if you're willing to address what's actually happening under, it's important that you pause. And one thing that I teach that's very, very useful is just to pause and see what's happening in your body right now. And what we do with kids is we draw. So we'll do, and we do this with adults too, because it works so well, because we're all kids once and we all love to draw. And so we'll actually take and do an outline, almost like a gingerbread person,
Okay.
and take two colors. So you can take like a red and a blue, or a pink and a green, whatever you like. And you're going to use one color to draw and kind of do an outline of the gingerbread person on the piece of paper. You're going to fill in the parts of your body that feel okay, or at least okay-ish,
Okay.
and then the parts of the body that don't feel good right now. So any places that feel open, that feel that they have flow, they have movement, they have some warmth, they have some pleasant aliveness in them, you can fill in with whatever is the pleasant color that you chose. And then any areas that feel tight or throbbing or achy or just kind of on fire, whatever the unpleasant sensations are, you're going to fill that out with the other color.
Okay.
And that takes a while. And if you can do it with your right hand and your left hand, it's best.
Hmm.
If you can do right and left hand at the same time, it's even more best, right? So it's even better. So that brings some hemisphere integration and some left-right brain integration. So if you can do that, that usually takes most people about between like 3 and 5 minutes.
Hmm.
That's enough time for me to be done with the sleeve of whatever cookie is in the cupboard. So you've already done something different. You've redirected your attention instead of externally, which is for most people a strategy to take attention away from what's in the body because it seems intolerable, to actually feeling what's in the body and finding out that it is tolerable. Oh, I felt my tightness and I felt my um, ickiness and dizziness and clamminess, whatever it is that you felt. And you know what? It didn't kill me. Not only did it not kill me, but I used my hands and my eyes. I used some of my communication system in my body to, do some movement. I did some movement with my hands. I did some movement with my eyes. And I'm okay. So in a way, it teaches you capacity. It teaches you to tolerate and to not be afraid of what's happening inside yourself right now. Because so often there's a fear of the emotion that we're feeling because of what would come next. Usually
Hmm. Okay.
when we're little beings and we didn't have the resources that we have now as adults. A lot of people will find as they do this exercise, you're like, oh, sometimes people will become aware of something and give that attention. Sometimes they'll be like, you know what, I did the exercise and nothing happened. I'm still gonna go eat the thing. That's fine. Go eat the thing. But now you are aware of what you're actually feeling, and because you're a little bit more in your body, it's harder to stuff yourself,
Oh, okay.
right? It's harder to do that self-harming behavior.
Okay.
So that's one thing that you can do is pause and draw.
I can do this.
You can totally do this. Another thing you can do is those of you who can sing or can't sing, but there's no one around to hear, so it doesn't really matter. So for all intents and purposes, you guys can sing. If you can sing something, even if you can hum or just engage your facial muscles, that is so incredibly helpful. So you can play whatever song you like to, you karaoke something in your living room. And if you can dance and move with it even better, you're going to find an immediate shift. And this is not to cheer you up, but to, even though it might cheer you up, unless you're singing all by myself or something horrible like that, right? You can see I can't really sing, which is why this is not a singing podcast. But if you can engage your facial muscles and if you can engage lips and cheeks and tongue, it's the same muscles that you would be engaging for eating. And a lot of the regulation that's happening on the autonomic nervous system level is happening because you're singing, and it's awesome. If you're singing with other people, which is why chanting and kirtan and all these things that we do in more tribal forms work so well for healing, even better. But I know most of you at 12 o'clock at night aren't calling a friend to chant together on the phone, so do what you can on your own. And a third way that can be very helpful is to just place a hand on your heart and a hand on your belly and just do some deep breathing. Or you can even put a hand on your forehead and one behind your head, kind of where your hair starts. If you still have hair, if you're not like Roland. Roland,
My
remember where
hair,
you
I still have hair back there.
yeah,
It's just not on the front.
remember where your hair used to be?
Shh.
Right back there. Where you had a ponytail when you were young, and one hand on your forehead, and hold your hands there and do some deep breathing there. All these three can be very helpful. Coloring, singing, self-touch. They work incredibly well. Allow them to work for you because they do work. And after that, if you still want to eat, go for it, but it's not going to be the same, and you're not going to like me because we're going to break your pattern.
Uh,
Because these are biological tools, and when we change the biological pattern, nothing is the same. You can't really coast through the old way.
Interesting. Again, interesting. Now, also interesting is that you said gingerbread man because we like one of the reasons we're driving around is like it's like the end of the year, right? And a lot of like the holidays, Halloween's coming up, but it's like the first holiday, right? And then Thanksgiving, and we're getting a lot of visiting done before like the main holiday season starts. And we were already been talking to people about the stress of the holidays and gingerbread man is like a in America is like a primary symptom. It's a primary
It's a primary
symbol.
symbol cookie.
Yeah, it's a symbol cookie of the holidays. Gingerbread man. It's like a
Okay.
Christmas cookie.
For all of you in Europe, just like an outline of like a crime scene investigation is gonna do just as well.
Yeah. So, does emotional eating, do you think, does that typically go up during the holiday season?
I haven't really read official statistics, and I would imagine those are heavily underreported when we do have them. But there is more of everything going on during the holidays. Like you said in our True Holidays promo video, boom, right? Like it's
Yeah.
just everything increases and gets compacted in a smaller time frame. And what happens is whatever the struggle is throughout the year just gets magnified. If you are single and you don't want to be single, you're going to be more lonely.
Hmm.
If you're married and there's marital issues, there's going to be that magnified because now there's in-laws coming in, and they're like in-laws are the
Oh,
magnifiers of the
and if you're
family issues.
divorced and remarried,
Oh,
or like now you have like
it's like with us, our
you've got like
family
eight
is
grandparents to
crazy.
go visit,
Yep.
and because
Yep.
what if they're divorced too? Because I'm like,
Mhm.
oh man, it's like a reverse family tree. I don't know what it is,
It's
but
a
it's crazy. You have so many people to go visit at the holidays, so many people to shop for,
yeah. It's
cook for.
it's very complicated. And if you haven't put in some family policies to keep stress low, like for us, we have a under the tree Christmas budget, and you can't break that. It was like $25 last year, right?
That's
So
just for between Galina and I.
yeah, so there's particular things that we do to keep stress low. Unless you've put certain policies in place, it's just going to be very, very difficult. So around the holidays, usually everything gets magnified. If you have chronic pain and illness, that's going to go up, and being in chronic pain makes you want to eat more because you're not feeling like you can regulate emotion, and there's a lot of underlying stuff to chronic pain that contributes to having difficulty with regulating affect. And all around that, you're going to be doing more drinking, more eating. And then also, there's this thing where you look around, and whenever you're having emotional challenges, it seems like everyone else isn't having them. I don't know why that happens. It's like when we were today in traffic going through LA, what a nightmare. It's like, and I think Tara Brock says that. She's like, every time you're in traffic, there's traffic, but you're not the traffic, but they are the traffic, right? The brain does that. So around the holidays, when you're having challenges, it feels like you're the only person who doesn't have a family, or you're the only person with a crazy family, or the only person
With 8 families.
who can't rap, or whatever it is, and somehow everyone else can rap, but you can't. So the holidays magnify everything, make it even more unrealistic. And then media and commercials and happy holiday movies, make everything so unrealistic. And so at the end of it,
Supposed to be the happiest time of the year.
yeah, we
And
and
I,
and
and I
it
met a
can
guy
be.
once who it is happy for him.
It can be, but it can also be a self-created misery. And food goes in to just make everything better. And around the holidays, we have pumpkin spice everything and chocolate everything. And this thing we say we can only eat once a year, but in reality, we're eating it like 25 times in a week. So we've actually eaten it 25 times in a year. And it becomes very, very complicated. So yes, it gets worse.
Oh,
Well, not
well,
only that, but there's like a cultural obligation to have a weight loss resolution for January. So you almost kind of want to fulfill that. It's like, okay, I'm going to gain all this weight throughout the holidays and emotionally eat so I can be on the bandwagon with all my friends. Come January 1st, I'm going to do the real food reset, whatever it is that you do. And you catch yourself in a cycle of binging and purging before you've started binging.
yeah. Even without the actual purge, but you mean you're binging food and purging weight, like,
Yep.
but a month later or 2 months later, and it's just a cycle that you cannot. I mean, it's a terrible cycle to be in because some of that, weight is going to be permanent.
Well, and it sounds so horrible to say, but sometimes we want to make ourselves worse before we make ourselves better because it keeps us kind of going up to the ceiling of the comfort zone, down to the basement of the comfort zone, up to the ceiling of the comfort zone, down to the basement of the comfort zone. And you go up and down, never really reaching what you want, never really having what you want, thus
Mm.
keeping yourself from whatever it is that you don't want when you get what you want, which is a part of human nature. And so that's why it's so nice to have somebody, some other adult outside of you who you can talk to, who gets you, who understands these patterns. And you can say, okay, if you're really not interested in these patterns, let's go and address them. When it was time for me to address them, because I had so many years of food confusion around being a classical dancer and this being my whole identity, and when I went back to address them, my therapist and I went down to me being 2, 3 years old. I mean, you barely have vocabulary to say what you want, let alone to make the decision to emotionally eat. So you don't know what's under, but whatever is under is asking for your attention, and you're perfectly capable as an adult of giving that to yourself so that food is food and love is love, as Janine Roth says. Yeah?
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's keep them separated.
Let's keep them separated, and then we can mix them at our own desire instead of having them mixed for us.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So we mentioned a couple times this chill holidays and the holiday stress rising, right? So if you're hearing this now, the reason is because it's going into, well, it's November, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're just about to kick off our chill holidays program, which it starts November
16th?
16th. And it's the second annual. We've done the chill holidays like this. Fourth or fifth annual, we've done a holiday program just in general. And this is sort of follow along with us group coaching program to like sort of survive the holidays in style, right? Like sort of
Well,
low key, low
it's a
stress.
very, very gentle way to keep you connected to yourself throughout the holidays.
Okay.
So it's 6 weeks of short daily lessons, whether it's a 5-minute video or audio or a small downloadable PDF, to keep you aware of the things that you said were important to you when you became a part of our group or a part of our listener tribe or a part of our reader group.
And Galina described it so much better than I
Where,
just did.
where you said, eating is important to me, eating healthy is important to me, and moving all throughout the day is important, and keeping stress low is important, because I have things I want to do in my life, and these three things are going to help me really reach the potential that I feel I have for myself, or do the creative thing, or have the family that I want to have, and live life in a happy way. And we hate to see you guys work so hard for your goals every year and then come the holidays feel like you have failed. In our eyes, if we're sort of here as your supporters slash teachers, you never fail, because even if you gain weight, you can always lose that. Even if you stop moving, you can always start moving again. But what we see is that everyone really gets down on themselves. Like, oh, I blew it. Like, I was doing so well and now I blew it. And this is what we see that really breaks our hearts. And why we created Chill Holidays last year was so that you stay connected to yourself, so that you feel like you are doing the best you can, because you always are. Yeah?
Yeah, yeah.
That felt like I didn't take a breath for like 7 paragraphs, but I really get, like, it really breaks my heart when I see you work so hard and be so committed and do your chopping and prepping and cooking and cleaning and posting recipes and going back and reading chapters of a book, and then feeling like you have failed at something. I don't even know what it is, but I hate to see that. So I want to bulletproof that for you for the holidays, so that you don't have to feel that again.
Excellent. I like that. Yeah, yeah. So we should wrap this up, right?
Yeah.
But we've got, so if you're feeling, you got that emotional eating kind of a bug going, right? We've got the three things, right? So kind of listen back, and we've got draw, right? Sing, and what was the third one?
Self touch.
Self-touch, right? Got that. And then we created a free video, right,
For true
for
holidays.
chill holidays, right? That you can go watch. We'll put that in the show notes, but it's at eatmovelive52.com/chill,
Yep.
right? So you can go there, watch how long is it?
It's about 20 minutes. It's 5 strategies to survive the holidays.
Yeah, yeah. And if you still, I mean, it's great. And if you still feel pulled like you want to join us for like what the thing that Galina said, where you get a little bit of something every day, you join our group. Um, feel free. On the no stress side of it, feel free to join us. If that 20-minute thing is good for you, that's awesome. But we'd love to have you join us.
Yeah, and even just comment in the Facebook group or share how you are seeing yourself with the holidays coming up. And if you're too overwhelmed to share, that's when you know that you should share, because we are designed to function in groups and in tribes that get each other. I mean, that's our biology. And the more we feel like we should get this on our own, the farther we're getting away from our human nature, and it's only gotten us in trouble so far.
Yeah, yeah. The way to succeed, the way to get better, and the way to like you said earlier, the first becoming aware that you have the issue is the first step. The second step is to sort of take charge, right, and to reach out. And I'm going to say the best way to do it right now is to do those three things, but also to come into the Facebook group and talk about it,
Hmm.
right? And Galina's there. I'm there. I can just go, yeah, yeah, it's really nice. I'm there with you. Solidarity, because I'm there with you. But Galina's always got some words of wisdom, and she can really help. She's helped a lot of people. I've seen it.
People are doing well, and I'm doing well. And I'm not doing well because I just woke up one morning and I was like, yeah, I'm well. It's because I've been actively searching the support of others in order to heal, because I'm aware that there isn't an internal fault in the system. There is a fault in how we live and how structures in society are built right now. And so there's more of an opportunity for us that are aware to go out and heal and then help others. And the more we heal ourselves, my hope is that when it's time for us to have a child, then I can pass on from my more regulated system a neurobiology that is not going to keep exacerbating that, because that's not information or opportunity or privilege that my parents or their parents had.
Yeah.
Yeah, so with that serious note, we'll leave you, and we hope that you have a lovely kickoff of the holidays. If you did have too much Halloween candy, who am I to say it was too much? So don't beat yourself up for it. And come in, say hello in the group, and keep listening.
As always, we have show notes for this episode, for each episode. You can find them all you can always find them all at eatmovelive52.com/podcast. It'll give you all of them, and you look for the emotional eating episode. But I'll create an easy one, eatmovelive52.com/emotional eating.
Great. And maybe you can also link this one to the talk that we had with Kelly Coffee, because she had some amazing ideas too.
Oh yeah. Kelly Coffee's a good one. Yeah, we've got a wealth of information about all things movement, nutrition, stress, emotional eating, self-love. We've got a podcast for almost everything in there, so poke around, but we will definitely put the link to that one in the notes.
Thanks for good questions, Roland.
Thank you for good responses, Galina. I can't believe I said Galina and I earlier. It was Galina and me.
Thank you for listening.
Bye, everybody. Talk to you soon. If you liked today's show and want more episodes like it, you can help us by rating and reviewing the show wherever you subscribe. That means iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, Podbean, or in the podcast app on your phone. Do you know somebody who can benefit from today's episode? Share it right now from the show notes, which you can always find at eatmovelive52.com/notes. And that funk that's playing behind me, it's called proto-funk, like Kevin MacLeod. Thanks, and talk to you soon.